Women in politics, women in technology is a hot issue, especially in terms of the 2016 election and indeed of Silicon Valley. We haven't had really a show about it yet, but today we have one of Silicon Valley's most prominent women and female activists to talk about technology, politics, and women. Freada Kapor Klein, who is a partner at Kapor Capital. Freada, welcome to TechCrunch TV. Welcome to Innovate 2016.
It's a pleasure to be here.
With your dog, of course. Freada, what do you make of the tenor of the debate so far when it comes to the woman issue?
The political debate, or within technology? And
within politics, within especially this, if we can politely call it a conversation between Trump and Clinton.
Well, it is frustrating at best. I thought we had evolved past this point of conversation about gender, but if we have to have it again, we have to have it again. I do think everybody is unfortunately resorting to lowest common denominator about gender in politics. Gender is a very complex, layered, nuanced conversation. Given the demographics of the US, we ought to be talking about which women. Are we talking about African American women? Are we talking about Latinas? Are we talking about immigrants? Are we talking about low-income women? Women are half the population, and to just put us into a single bucket as if any one of us can represent or speak for all of the others is a little bit misleading.
Freada, what is Kapor Capital? It's a different kind of venture capital firm from the traditional Silicon Valley one. Summarize what you're trying to do, especially when it comes to issues associated with racial and gendered inclusion.
Kapor Capital is a seed stage tech firm. So we are investing in tech startups at the seed stage, but their mission and their business purpose has to be about closing gaps. Gaps of access, gaps of opportunity, gaps of outcome. We are sector agnostic, so it could be in ed tech, could be healthcare IT, could be fintech, could be justice tech, could be people ops technology. So the type of technology is less important to us than the fact that the business itself closes gaps.
And this issue of closing gaps, I know is very close to your heart. You're very much involved with a new initiative when it comes to women in tech in Silicon Valley. Do you want to tell me its origins of how you came to be involved in it and where we're at with it now?
Project Include, really Ellen Pao gets the lion's share of the credit for bringing us together, having a series of dinner discussions. All of us have been in tech companies and in the tech ecosystem for a very long time. Most of the women are engineers, and it's just been an absolute pleasure to work with an engineering-driven group. So we all experience frustrations at how slow the progress has been within technology with respect to diversity and inclusion issues. It's now been a couple of years since Google and Facebook and others that used to be suing to hide their data stopped suing and started releasing their data. And we thought, well, the needle really hasn't moved that much. So let's see if we can roll up our sleeves, be engineering driven, be action oriented, and come up with some practical recommendations.
Freada, there's a big audience of entrepreneurs and investors on TechCrunch. What is your message from Project Include on this?
The message from Project Include is that diversity and inclusion is important. It ought to be baked into businesses. It's much easier to do it when you're at the early seed stage startup. It's much harder to retrofit diversity and inclusion into a large company. And we're looking at basically three things that we'd like startups and VCs to do. And that is to approach the issue with a lens of inclusiveness. That means all women. That means people of color. That means all groups, to make sure that our work environments are not asking people to check themselves at the door. The second thing is comprehensiveness. We've seen a lot of one-off efforts. Let's release our data and we're done. Let's set goals and we're done. Let's have unconscious bias training and we're done. We're asking people to have a rigorous, comprehensive approach to issues of diversity and inclusion. And the third is accountability, to agree on some standardized metrics so that organizations, companies, VCs can actually look at who's making progress and can we learn from their progress and who hasn't made so much progress.
As you know, not all the reaction in Silicon Valley to Project Include has been positive. There are some people, I won't mention names, who argue that they hire on merit and that they're not going to discriminate. And particularly those critics tend to be men. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think we share an aspiration to be a meritocracy. I think all of the new rigorous research that's rooted in neuroscience says the human brain is wired to be biased. So despite our best intentions, we do behave differently when we see a resume with one name versus another name, with one school name versus another school name. So what we need is some efforts and a multiplicity of efforts, both human and I think tech tools can be leveraged here as well, to mitigate bias so that we can indeed be the meritocracy we want to be.
What do you think Project Include can teach the rest of the country, particularly perhaps in the context of today's divisive political culture?
Well, look, if you look at the demographics of the U.S., we are already across the U.S. in the K-12 education system, we're already majority kids of color. That is the future of the U.S. consumer market. That is the future of the U.S. employees. So those companies that do a better job at selling their products and services to those growing markets are going to be more financially successful. And those companies that think about what's my work environment, what's my culture like, who feels comfortable here, who doesn't. The more expansive and inclusive company culture is, the more you're likely to attract top talent from a range of backgrounds.
So it's a win-win. The people who hire women, the people who hire minorities are not only doing the right thing, perhaps in moral, ethical terms, but also doing the right thing in business terms.
I absolutely think that. And some of our strongest companies in Kapor Capital came from the lived experience of the founders. And so what we know is that entrepreneurs often scratch their own itch. And so what we want are to identify entrepreneurs from different backgrounds who can indeed come up with new companies that serve new markets.
Well, Freada, I won't make any jokes about scratching new itches with your delightful dog on the ground, but I really want to thank you. A real honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And I want to also congratulate you for Project Include. I think most of our listeners, in fact, all our viewers, are really impressed and thrilled with what you're trying to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.